Ladies and gentlemen, nice to see you. Welcome to the last session for today, which is titled How Automated Mobility in Public Transport Can Address the Needs of Smaller Cities and Their Citizens. My name is Thorsten Fleischer. I'm working for the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology and at KIT for the Institute of Technology Assessment. I've convened this session together with my colleague Jens Schippel from KIT and two Norwegian colleagues, Marianne Røkhaug and Hannes Sæther from Sintef. And before we go in medias res, I just want to briefly give you a little bit background about the motivation for that session. In technology assessment and innovation research, we have something like a standard operation procedure, which includes an element that we call situation appreciation, which basically means putting a new technology, a bunch of new technologies into social, political, techno-scientific contexts and analyzing also the actor structure of a certain technology development. That's important, especially if you want to understand diffusion speeds and also obstacles to diffusion of a new technology. And when you do that, you can use different measures for diffusion speed and diffusion obstacles. The pretty common measure for that is number of vehicles deployed. You have heard that this morning, but another way of putting it is services started that address mobility needs and or societal challenges in the mobility sector. And that's the way, with our background, that we wanted to go. If you do that, you get a different idea for structuring the diffusion challenge, because if you look at the application of automated driving in the personal transport sector, you find at least 4 different service models which are different with regard to both societal needs and actor structure, which are automated or autonomous private vehicle, still privately owned, like the conventional cars, robotaxis, route-based public transport, like classic public transport but automated, and last but not least, new public transport services, new public transport service models, which have some ride-hailing or some ride-pooling or a combination of both involved. And all 4 are different with respect to certain aspects. And for the session today, we want to focus on the latter 2, the 2 public transport service options. We won't speak about the privately owned autonomous vehicles, and we don't discuss robotaxis in that field. With that perspective, we have found, oh, sorry, that was one too fast. And it doesn't got back. Can you set it back 1, please? Yeah, that there are some substantial differences between larger metropolitan areas and small and medium cities and rural areas. From a mobility research perspective, we know that car dependency in rural areas and small and medium cities is much higher than in metropolitan areas, that public transport services are sparser and of lower service quality, that the economics of current public transport systems are much worse, and the driver shortage problem, which is pressing in a number of European countries, is much more urgent than it is in most cities. But the majority of research and deployment projects seem to be focusing on larger metropolitan areas. And one of the questions is, why do we think that is the case? And we thought about some potential. This thing has an enormous latency. It needs some patience that I still don't have. There's a number of potential possible reasons that might be relevant for that situation. One is, and it's still to be discussed, whether automated vehicle technology is not ready yet for application in small and medium cities and rural conditions, especially when you think about the connection of rural communities across rural roads. So leaving the city space or the community space and putting automated vehicles onto public roads between cities. And a second potential reason might be that there's no clear business case for applications of public transport services in these small and medium cities and rural areas. So we don't see any private investment in that, which would leave the responsibility, if we want to have public transport services, to the public administrations in that field. The challenge here is that what we experience is that these public service administrations usually have no capacity as acting as a system builder. In order to operate in automated public transport systems, you need to have more than just vehicles. You need to have an operation center, you need to have maintenance, all type of that. And smaller communities are usually not familiar with those challenges in operating these infrastructures. And of course, smaller communities also have weaker lobbying capabilities and support capabilities for their own interests on different political levels, which is another challenge. And we might be hearing from Polis about that a little bit more. We see less civil society pressure in rural areas. That's a little bit different from larger cities where you tend to have dedicated groups who are interested in establishing a sustainable transport or mobility system within the city, which are much less present in rural areas, fewer advocacy groups. And at the same time, another public policy challenge, which is a stronger need for inter-community and inter-level coordination. So in order to develop a meaningful service across different communities in rural areas, you have these communities to work together, which is a challenge in itself other than in major communities. And in some cases, that might be necessary even across different political majorities, which is another challenge if you have a right-center government having to work together with a more left-wing oriented government. And last but not least, we have, of course, when you compare smaller communities with larger communities, different practices and experiences with and in organizing and financing operating public transport services. So that's our first diagnosis. In order to dig deeper, we have invited an exquisite panel of four dedicated speakers. First will be Marianne Røkok, who is currently professor at NTNU, so the Norwegian Technical University at Trondheim, and also chief scientist at SINTEF, a contract research organization in Norway. After her, we will hear from Mayor Detlef Huge, who is the mayor of a 30,000, I guess, inhabitants community in southern Germany, who will speak about his experiences in trying to deploy a AV-based local transportation system. Third will be Laura Barbier from Polis, who is very experienced on a policy level. He's, as I'm not mistaken, also political. Now, she's a civil engineer. She's a civil engineer. And last will be Mathieu Grandorge, I guess pretty well known to the audience, political scientist, formerly La Rochelle, now working as a, what is called officially, let me look at it, senior project manager, smart and green mobility at the city of Helmond, close to 100,000 in the Netherlands. And after that, you will have the opportunity to ask questions, and perhaps we'll also find some time for some audience participation exercises. Let's see how this develops. I hand over the stage to Marianne, please.
Yes. See if it works. Okay. Yeah. Yes. So, okay, I went too fast as well. Thank you for having me. I will introduce a little bit this topic and to broaden the perspectives a bit from the research community side. I've been working on automation together with Hanne Sæther, also in the MODI project that you heard quite a lot about. In this session, we will the aim is to understand how we can ensure that the benefits of automated mobility reach everyone, every corner of our society, and including the often overlooked small towns and rural areas. And we'll look at how connected cooperative and automated mobility transform these communities, and how to bring invaluable insights from social science and humanities perspectives to guide the way forward when striving to answer these questions. And we think this last question is quite important as well. Okay. Just to give a little bit of background from where Torsten left off. Why are we interested in this topic? and to take us a bit further into what kind of research is really needed within this field. What have we done before, and what approaches do we think we need when looking into this topic? As you know, autonomous vehicles have a significant promise for enhancing public transportation by offering more flexible services, as we heard, and perhaps more cost-effective as well mobility solutions. And this promise or this potential is particularly relevant for small and medium-sized communities where public transport options are often very limited and car dependency is quite high. So this is the kind of rationale behind it. But a lot of these services also hinge on adoption from the community side, so public acceptance and demand. And there is the expectations that the AVs will address critical citizen needs and improve local and regional mobility systems. However, as far as now, there is not so much experience, and there are a lot of uncertainties still regarding how EV development will evolve and how it will change alongside other mobility patterns. So, at least from this, it's evident that we need to focus on two facts, that we need to focus on automated vehicles and CCAM, how it responds to citizen needs, and also how public acceptance is key to developing these services successfully. And based on this, there are two main questions that we need to raise. Let's see, it's a bit slow. First, we need to, this is a really patience game. We need to think more about how our public transport systems really developed. Is it developed in with regards to citizens' needs? And we know that a lot of the transport systems today are based on long-term history, and it's not really developed in relation to needs of today. And this is also something that you see in the rural communities and in smaller cities. And the development is very seldom based on a needs-based approach, I would say, for the transport systems of today and how we try to transform them. So this has not been the core of the technology development, I would claim. And if we look at some of the results with thinking about how automated vehicles have been introduced in other areas, you can see this a similar kind of rationale, that the one to the left there is looking at the public roads authorities' perceptions about the barriers and the needs that they have when it comes to deployment of AVs. And it varies quite a lot, even within this kind of specific group. And to decide, we have looked into the different actors in the logistics sector, and it becomes very evident that all these kind of different stakeholders in the ecosystem have very different needs when it comes to how to deploy AVs. So often we think about needs as something that is kind of common, that the general public share, but this is just a reminder that we need to think about, when we develop these emerging technologies, that it's really challenging to get to the user needs because they are so different, and that the diverse actors have very different needs depending on, for instance, the operational diversity and the need for these very context-specific automated solutions. And I guess we will hear that also from the cities when we are diving into some examples of how it's being done in these cities. So we really need to have these customized approaches that reflect different user needs. And I think that's also something that's been a bit overlooked if you think back to the introduction today. It's a bit simplified often, the way we think about needs. So to the other question, on what do we really know about public acceptance of these systems? And this is not particular to small and medium-sized cities, but in general, this kind of the way we have approached this question is often by focusing on public acceptance, which is a word that we have heard a lot, I think, throughout these days. Come on. But it's often based on a very general understanding of acceptance. For instance, the type of questions that you usually ask is, what would you be willing to ride an autonomous vehicle, which is often not related to something that people have a lot of experience with. So it at least raises two problems. What kind of acceptance? The acceptance of what, really? Because it's something that most people do not have any experience with. And under which conditions? So what is this autonomous vehicle supposed to be used for? And this connects to the needs again. Of course, what kind of benefits is it supposed to bring? Or what kind of services does it bring? And also the acceptance of whom, of course. And then you have the whole human interaction, machine interaction field, which is not really about acceptance, is it? It's not about the societal acceptance. So, what we contend is that we actually need to shift the focus quite a lot from the, I would call it, the old paradigm of how we do research, which is very technology-centered, where pilots are often limited ODDs with very unclear direct implications for society, where we have quite opaque or difficult to grasp testing environments, which are often siloed research or one-off pilots, and the ties to society is not very clear. There's often little focus on scalability and the business models, and there has been a lot of focus on technological readiness. And if you think about what do we need instead, I think we need to shift the focus towards a more needs and societal benefit-centered approach, where we do pilots in real-life settings with very clear social benefits for the community. And so it will be nice to hear the next speakers, I think. Where the testing done is transparent, done in transparent environments, so that you actually can learn and cumulatively build knowledge from one project to the next. And then you also need the strong ties to the society. And then we heard this also this morning, more focus on the scalability and the profitability of the services, because this is often not taken seriously enough. And I think focusing on the socio-technical readiness or the social readiness. So I say socio-technical readiness because you actually need to think about the social readiness and the technological development in tandem. It's not two separate things going on. They are mutually affecting each other, these things. No, it went too fast. So last slide. Yeah, this is the topics that we will delve into in just a short moment, if I can go back. So this means that in framing research and innovation, we need to take social science and humanities perspectives into account in order to understand the real and the broad transport and mobility needs out there that these technologies are going to fulfill, and how to adopt the technological solutions to the real societal needs and the services, and not the other way around, which I think has been done quite a lot. And then you also need to understand the expectations and the visions of different actors and stakeholders, and the barriers to adoption. And this is also somewhere where social sciences and humanities can help to overcome these barriers. And this is, of course, also more and more knowledge in the new Horizon Europe calls that are focusing more on the social readiness and the social readiness pilots. So it will be interesting to see how this develops further. And that's about it from me. We will delve into these questions now. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. I guess many of you already have a bunch of questions. Just hold it until we heard all the other speakers. I will give the floor to the next gentleman, Mayor Huge. May we hear from you what your experiences with your deployment interests were? The floor is yours.
We're talking about automatic vehicles and trying to get automatic slides. Well, ladies and gentlemen, dear organizers, it's a pleasure for me to speak in this EU conference as a representative of a truly small German community. Thank you for the invitation. So you have to listen to my first speech in English. I assume you won't be able to locate our community right away. So here are 3 maps. Bad Schönborn is a small town in southwestern Germany, located instead of Baden-Württemberg. Yeah. Much more southwest, yeah. You get it? Near the well-known city of Heidelberg. Nearly 14,000 inhabitants find employment in the technology region Rhein-Neckar-Dreieck between the cities of Mannheim, Heidelberg, and Karlsruhe. SAP headquarters is nearby, for example. Bad Schönborn has the title Bad, but it's really nothing bad. It's a title conferred upon towns with bath, thermal, mineral, or brine spas. Bad Schönborn has a thermal spa with a natural, warm, salty water and several rehabilitation clinics which attract almost 800 guests each year. Sometimes we try not to be a traditional bath and spa resort and look for the future. For example, we have the largest floating PV system on our quarry pit lake. As far as mobility goes, the town is serviced by the regional train system with stops every 30 minutes and some buses. But the predominant form of transportation remains the car. There's an increase in private electrical cars, and we are happy to provide 14 public charging terminals at 7 locations, which means 1 charging point per 1,000 inhabitants. I think it's remarkable. These charging points are also used for electric car sharing system. And since December 24, the 8-seater bus in the car sharing system is used as a volunteer-driven bus, which can be ordered on demand during specific times. The project is not a transportation innovation, but a small contribution to social participation for older people. But as a mayor, I think it's my job to think about living problems, upcoming problems, and to find solutions. And one challenge is the side effects of too much car traffic. One aim must be to reduce private traffic, to reduce traffic noise and exhaust fumes, to reduce accident risks and hazards for vulnerable road users. And you all know it, less private traffic can only be reached by better public transport, even in small towns. What you also know is we are at the mercy of the lack of bus drivers. It's reported that by 2040 there will be 80,000 unfilled positions just for bus drivers in Germany. Already we have the situations where school children wait in vain for a school bus to pick them up due to the lack of bus drivers. Because we are solution-oriented, we decided that we would, despite our little size, pursue the idea of implementing autonomous bus in Bad Schönborn, offering our citizens a long-range, reliable transportation services while giving manufacturers of such vehicles the opportunity of testing their products in live settings. This was the reason for joining the EU Interreg project Ginevra together with KIT in 23. The project focuses on the implementation of disruptive technologies in small and medium-sized towns, paying particular attention to the governance behind the process. Whether or not the project can realize a test period with a demonstrator AV running through our town remains to be seen at this point. But what is our idea? A demonstrator will most likely be used by persons interested in experiences, although the planned route connects points of interest such as the train station, the town hall, and the thermal spa. It will most likely be used for what it is, as a demonstrator, for the people which want to get the opportunity to embark on this new technological style. But AV in the future will replace person-driven public transportation. We expect the regular users of the bus lines, perhaps hesitantly at first, but with more and more confidence as the service establishes itself. No one should be excluded from a reliable and affordable public transportation system just because they live in a small town and not a major city. And the traffic roads in our small towns are not as complex in small villages as in Oslo, Hamburg, or Milano, so the IE in the cars can learn in Bad Schönborn. So what's our motivation? Smaller cities cannot facilitate a rollout in Germany, as most of them do not operate with their own public transportation. This usually takes place on the district level and in the large cities. That is where the empowerment of AV traffic lies. We can offer to serve as a testing field, but even there, we can constrained by limited financial and human resources. As a small town, however, we can give impulses to show what is necessary. Something we did in November 23 when we invited some of the Germany's foremost AV thinkers and planners for a conference in Bad Schönborn. This event set some standards for smaller towns. And the collaboration after the event has been extremely fruitful for us by extending our network both vertically and laterally and showing that the interest in AV is not limited to metropolitan areas. But if you ask for the motivation, of course, we have to talk about money. 70 to 80% of public transport costs are personal costs. It's becoming increasingly difficult for the government to finance public transport. Public transport can be expanded and public transport can improve if costs for government client are reduced. As a small village, we also bear the burden of the region's current deficit. Instead of cutting services, innovation is needed. And innovation means the expansion of affordable autonomous public transportation can no longer be achieved through test drives. Transport operators must reliably order large quantities of buses from manufacturers to ensure that production becomes profitable through the number of units. And only when demand is defined, the global car manufacturers in China or Mercedes or in BMW or Google or Tesla, their insights in AV has to be applied for public transport. We shouldn't reinvent the wheel in more scientific studies. Politicians at higher levels must understand this, and why shouldn't small communities also demand this understanding? The simple calculation is in the context of declining personal cost. 70 to 80% personal cost. One supervisor for 3 or 4 AV passes, for example, economic viability is achieved with a time lag. Will everyone benefit equally? If the AVs are consequently designed to cater to all individuals, regardless of their needs, there will a defined increase in mobility justice. On the one hand, it's essential for the success of AV to consider all target groups. However, if quality standards are set too high at an early stage, the project's launch is jeopardized. Implementation orientation and pragmatism may be advantaged if the municipal level is involved at an early stage. These are impulses that hopefully will emerge from this conference. It's a pleasure for me to speak here today, but also to accelerate the future initiatives for autonomous public transport. You all know it's about more than just traffic. When we promote autonomous public transport, it's about social participation, environmental protection, and last but not least, affordability. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for these important perspectives from a practitioner's perspective on a small community level. I guess we will hear from you again on a panel. And with that, I continue with Laura Barbillo, representing Polis. I'm not completely sure whether I should say representing or speaking for, but I guess you have some of the answers to the questions that the mayor asks. Yeah. At least I hope so.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. Let me already pass it while I talk, since it takes a moment. So my name is Lara Villa. I work for Polis as the traffic efficiency cluster there. And just very briefly, Polis is a network, the leading network of European cities and regions working for sustainable and innovative transport. We have more than 100 cities of all sizes. So we represent the perspective of cities, of local and regional public authorities. But today, of course, we'll focus more on that small and medium-sized cities angle. So broadly, our work that we do at Polis and that of our member cities is guided by the main urban mobility challenges that we jointly need to address and that definitely have not been solved. Improving air quality, increasing road safety, achieving a modal shift from private cars towards sustainable modes, and decarbonizing and ensuring that these transitions are all happening in a just and equitable way. So under this just transition, that's just a little bit of a perspective of introduction, but I think it's important to remind these objectives and these goals whenever we are discussing the technological developments. But looking at today's topic and size, what's the motivation then for a smaller city to push for the introduction of AVs? I don't want to repeat myself. There was a lot already said. I really agree with both presentations that came before that showcase these 4 main drivers. They are very recent from conversations that we had with our members as of last year, some focus groups. So these affect to all cities, regardless of sizes. Perhaps not all of these are common in all the cities. There might be some priorities, of course, but I think small and medium-sized cities have a important perspective in each of these. First, on the driver shortage and the high operation cost, SMCs, to shorten small and medium-sized cities, often have more limited budgets. They also have a smaller labor pool, making it harder also to attract and retain drivers. Automation could also help reduce this dependence on the human resources that was very much pointed out by the Mr. Mayor, and it potentially also can allow for these off-peak and demand-responsive operations in areas where having a full-time staffing is just economically unfeasible. Then, looking at the road safety, it was mentioned that in the previous presentation that the small cities have less complex roads and urban scenarios. I think it's true, but it's also very common in small and medium-sized cities that there is much more rural roads connecting different parts of the village, and these are usually more narrow, they are unlit, they are accident prone, the markings are not as clear, all things that if you have tried at least like a shuttle in the European pilots, you see that these have a huge impact. And also, small and medium-sized cities usually have less advanced traffic management systems. Yes. Anyways, we continue while this comes back mainly. The other thing was about the last mile problem, trying to improve that inclusivity. This is a critical issue for small and medium-sized cities, dispersed populations, and surrounding villages. So here, public transport is often infrequent or unavailable completely. And then finally, on the attractiveness of the public transport, less frequent, also makes it less attractive, less dependable, less reliable, and that's why the public transport systems in the smaller cities are usually a bit less attractive. Automation can help make this a bit more attractive and maybe push away the people from the. Should I go?
Continue, please.
Okay, from the private cars, which is, as I mentioned before, one of the main goals. Then I had here now a slide showing a bit a discussion paper that Polis did a few years ago. It's already a bit old, from 2018. We gathered with our members, we presented, discussed a little bit the situation and presented this paper trying to trying to raise awareness on the topic. Automation back then was not a priority in many of our cities, trying to encourage a balanced debate and to address the optimism bias that still exists. I mean, we still saw it today during the opening. I think that we still need to look at things a bit more nuanced, especially when we look at the perspective of local public authorities. So the paper is a bit old. We still stand by many of the things that we highlight there, and we actually hope to follow up the document soon with looking forward with our members. The priority of automation is there, so really looking at a bit more action-driven. But even though the technology has definitely advanced, I mean, we cannot deny that, the implications that we studied and discussed with our members there still remain because they are also looking further ahead than when we are now. So first, I was talking about the impact of travel behavior, still unclear. Worst case scenario, which is something that cities do not want. And of course, when I talked, I don't mean every single one of the cities. There's different views, but let's say in a at a hard level, aggregated way. Let's say these are the conclusions or the implications that our members saw with the travel behavior that automation leads to increase in kilometers travels. They don't want this. But on the best case, that it would actually lead to a removal of private cars, in favor of shared mobility, public transport, combined with walking and cycling. This is what we see as the best scenario. Now, for this to happen, we need to have a massive modal shift, which is not easy, given the attachment to car and independent mobility. We would need to really have level 5 automation, which is not yet realistic in the short and medium term. At least that's how we see it. And we would also need to have a redundancy of fleet vehicles during off-peak times, which is also a bit unrealistic, given how fleet managers drive for economic efficiency. But that would be the best case. Then looking at the spatial implications, people are happy when combining with walking and cycling. Then looking at the spatial implications, I mean, yes, there can be some urban space that becomes available after parking becomes redundant, but it's important that this newly created road space is put to other functional uses, not only to more capacity for more AV vehicles. Of course, urban sprawl and longer commuting, it's a fear, especially because commuting traffic is already a huge concern, the traffic that comes from the small and medium-sized cities towards the cities. But once again, this will depend on how the AVs are deployed. Implications at the social level: enhanced accessibility, sure. We know risk of there's also this risk of increased social division and inequality if we have a market-driven approach where it's all just individualized, private, automated vehicles. Not people. We still really don't know a lot about the people, how we trust the technology. At least in Europe, this is what the colleagues from SINTEF were highlighting. There hasn't been enough services to really test this and deploy it and understand the consequences. Road safety has been talked a lot, so I won't really dwell too much on it. We know that there is a promise that it will reduce driver error and distraction, and that's great. But also, technology isn't perfect. It is not infallible. We still need to consider ethical dilemmas on how the AVs will make these split-second decisions in unavoidable crash scenarios. We need public debate. We need to address these issues and to really increase this reliability on the technology. And then, hopefully it goes to the next slide. Yes. Final on the possible implications, then, I mean, as I said, automation could really improve safety, but we must stay realistic. It's not automatic. Urban design, policing, rigorous testing are necessary to make this promise real. In traffic efficiency, AVs could bring to the cities a lot of data that is much needed for traffic and asset management, of course, when this collected data in real time is shared with the public authorities. That is also important. In terms of the road space management, there could be eventually gains there, but until we achieve a level of integration and automation that it's way beyond where we have this, we are going to have perhaps increased congestion with a mixed traffic. We are going to have maybe reduced road capacity with ensuring safety with the coexistence with other users. And there's, in terms of infrastructure, there's going to be a lot of investments, but they will depend also on the development path that the authorities push and want to invest in. But for sure, significant public investment will happen, and it must be justified as in clear societal benefits and clear addressing the challenges that I was mentioning before. But hope that was more or less known. I just wanted to bring the perspective on the issues that public authorities care the most. Then answering to the question on what is the role of local and regional authorities in the deployment of AVs. Public authorities have a multifaceted role in enabling automated mobility. This morning we heard a lot about public authorities as enabler, but they were mainly talking, or at least I got that impression, at the national level, and very so often the cities and the local level are left out of that conversation. And I have experienced this a lot in the past few months, and the truth is that it's impossible to ignore the cities when we are trying to deploy automated vehicles on the road, on urban roads, which are directly the responsibility of cities. So the role of local and regional authorities: first, they act as facilitators, creating the conditions, enabling the infrastructure that they manage, supportive regulations, which do not only relate to type approval and such, but think about what was mentioned before on even just the UBAR, the urban vehicle access regulations, the speed limits, who can enter which road and at what speed. All of this is the competence of cities, so we cannot leave them aside. Cities act as regulators. They must ensure that the AVs operate with clear frameworks that align with the sustainability goals and their sustainable urban mobility plans. They are coordinators, connecting stakeholders, and more importantly, something that I already said, cities are urban space and traffic managers. Cities are the ones that have to rethink how the space will be allocated, how the streets will function, how AVs interact with other modes, and what rules they must follow so that the interaction is safe. And while much of the conversation around AVs tends to focus on the large metropolitan areas, we need to recognize that SMCs have different needs, different constraints and starting points, and we need to address this directly if we want automation to deliver real value across all urban contexts. First of all, and once again, this doesn't mean that every SMC suffers from all of this. It's not, usually it's the case one or the other, but we do have all of these situations, characteristics happening across the EU. We see it with our members. First, many SMCs have smaller teams than big cities. They have a lower expertise in AV or digital mobility, or at least they have less people to focus on this topic. Their responsibility for innovation, for regulation, or for digital infrastructure is not always the competence of a smaller city. Sometimes this sits at the regional level. So there's also competence gaps in SMCs that bigger metropolis, capitals, huge cities do not experience. They also have less financial resources. There is a smaller tax base, there are tighter budgets, and all of this restricts the ability to invest in pilots, but also on the digital infrastructure that it's needed to enable them, which leads me to the next point. Many SMCs still lack key enablers like open data platform, integrated traffic management, smart sensors. It's great that we have here the city of Helmond, who I think is an example of this is not necessarily happening there. They are super advanced, but we see it also a bit as an outlier with the rest of our members, with the rest of SMCs, who sometimes they don't even have anyone working on data, something as basic as that. So how are they going to put the automated vehicles on the road? And then on a positive, I mean, they also are smaller teams. They are also more agile, and sometimes there's less complexity, and it allows for making decisions a bit quicker and to implement a bit more focused, context-specific pilots. It has its positives también, also. I mix now languages, but yeah. So my final slide has been a lot of hiccups now with this presentation. But in the end, ultimately, no matter how advanced the technology is, what really matters is whether automated mobility delivers on its promise for people, not just the system. So the question is really, are we meeting societal expectations and needs? There are high hopes. Is congestion, service access, improvement, and make transport safer? But there is still a lot of public skepticism. People question, are AVs truly inclusive? Do they reduce emissions in practice, especially if you look at the back on the digital systems and the energy consumption that needs? Are they affordable for all users? And this is not only something for people. City officials are asking themselves these questions whenever decided also on the priorities. Public authorities of all levels, and myself, I question this really on a regular basis. So we really need to understand citizens' needs and perceptions. It's great, these projects that they're mentioned here, the Mori, the Sinfonica, the Move to SICAM. These are all projects that are great and are looking at these, coming with frameworks, methodologies, but now they need to be applied in all of these cities, and not only in these the cities, the few cities that are lucky enough to be in one of these European-funded projects. We still know that safety and security are consistently ranked as top priorities. There are mixed levels of trust, and trust is a major factor because it's closely tied to transparency, consistent performance, how well the technology is explained, and how well it is introduced. And then we also cannot ignore something that is too often ignored in these discussions, the digital literacy of the people. I think we are overestimating the capabilities of people to be fully digitalized. And I'm not talking also like even the younger people have issues sometimes understanding the different apps, the different platforms that they have to use, and it's for every single aspect of their life. So we really need to discuss this and to come up with the solutions and to address this issue, which I can guarantee you. You can look at some numbers from this project called TRIPS. It's much bigger than it looks like, even in countries that you would think are highly digitalized, like the Netherlands, for instance, where I believe it was about half of the population did not consider themselves to be literate. And I think that's it. I mean, my last point was on the job issue. I think that in the public transport sector, the cities, we are all aware that there is a lack of job of drivers of public transport. However, I don't think that the regular citizen and user knows this. So I have an experience in a project where a shuttle was introduced like this, and it was vandalized because people were already complaining, is this going to lead to a lack of jobs? What is happening with automation? When in reality, it was filling a very specific need that they had. So I think we need to communicate that either we have this issue with driver shortage and automation can help, so really make the benefits very clear. Sorry if I went a bit longer than expected, but that's it. Looking forward to the discussion.
Consistent performance, that's possibly the phrase of the afternoon. Thank you very much, Laura, for bravely moving ahead despite the inconsistent performance of the presentation system, and for bravely showing how humans might master technical limitations almost seamlessly. The last speaker today, this afternoon, is Mathieu, who will present us with some insights from his experiences in the city of Helmond. Mathieu.
Okay, this is a little bit the disadvantage of coming the last one to speak. You will hear a lot of things that have already been more or less said by the speakers, but it shows the similarities that SMCs are. So, I start by a black. Okay, it comes. So, as Thorsten mentioned in his introduction, Helmond is a small and medium-sized city of nearly 100,000 inhabitants. It's located in the south of the Netherlands, not far from a bigger city, Eindhoven. And it is a city, though small, that is growing fast, both in terms of populations and businesses. 15,000 new houses are expected by 2040. It may seem not a lot to you, but it represents an increase of 25% compared to the current situation. So the growth generates a pressure both on housing but also on mobility. We are looking for innovative solutions to continue to grow while having also the ambitious goals, in terms of livability for our inhabitants. We have been selected by the European Commission as one of the 100 climate-neutral smart cities, and we intend also to come to the objectives we have. And we have been a living lab for mobility where we cooperate actively with research institutes, academics, industry, notably within our automotive campus, and some of them are in these rooms. We have been involved, as mentioned by Laura, we have been very active in EU projects on smart mobility for more than 15 years, and notably on CITS, so infrastructure, but also on SICAM. Helmond is a member of the SICAM Partnership Association, which proves also our will to go there, and of course we are a member of police. And I will try to explain why we believe that SICAM and shared and public transport solution could help Helmond improve its attractiveness and livability. I should have done that a little bit earlier. I forgot that. No, it's coming. Okay. So Helmond faces similar mobility challenges as many small and medium-sized cities. It has been already mentioned. So one of the main challenges in Helmond is the main road that you can see. You can see it in red on the picture. That cuts our city in two parts. And this is a physical barrier that generates negative impacts in terms of congestion, noise, and pollution. Many cars, many trucks circulate on that road. Helmond is quite well connected to the outside world with 4 train connections. It is an advantage and a chance, I would say, for a small city like Helmond. However, as it is typical for many small and medium-sized cities, and as mentioned by Mr. Mayor notably, we really are lacking efficient last-mile solutions. So as a result, many of our people in Helmond, but also in other medium-sized cities, are really still car-oriented, and they think really that car is for them the easiest option. We believe that shared automated vehicles can help fill the gap by providing safe, reliable, and flexible last-mile transport services. As Helmond continues to grow, offering efficient alternative to private car use becomes even more essential, especially as we aim to become climate neutral. But to succeed, SICAM must work in complementarity with conventional public transport, notably the trains and other shared modes. So the city has really a role to play in that, in the deployment of SICAM services. I really like the slide of Laura about the various roles of the city can have, and I really think that it proves that local authorities have a role to play. It should aim at maximizing the cities should aim at maximizing the positive impacts of SICAM while also mitigating the negative ones. So indeed, from a city perspective, the impacts of SICAM deployment can be positive and negative. I will go quite quickly on that because we have spoken a lot on that. This could lead to have efficient, flexible solutions for the citizen, but also a wide deployment of automated private cars could result in more kilometers driven, as mentioned by Laura, and more vehicles on the road. SICAM has the potential to change our urban space, to free up valuable urban space, especially areas currently used for parking. This could be used to create more green spaces, notably. But we also need to be cautious. If not carefully managed, the deployment of SICAM could encourage urban sprawl and making cities less compact and sustainable. So SICAM can contribute to significantly improve also road safety, but in the same time, some new threats related to cybersecurity can appear. In Helmond, we do not want automated mobility to be nice gadgets. We do not want that. We want to have useful transport services, real, practical mobility services that actually improve people's daily lives. Our goal is not to create solutions that respond to our goal, is to create solutions that respond to the needs and expectations of Helmond citizens and organizations, and all presentations really mention that. So we believe that the SICAM solution must be inclusive. We cannot forget the most vulnerable one, I mean older adults, but also people with disabilities, and also those living in underserved neighborhoods. So we decided in Helmond to adopt a gradual approach, which is transparent. It was mentioned by you in your introduction, and realistic. By implementing SICAM services, we aim at improving the livability in Helmond, making the city more accessible, more connected, and more inclusive for everyone. This explains why we decided testing HAVIs with citizens and stakeholders and prepare the future by co-creating with them. And this is what I will develop now. So, you mentioned, Marianne, in your introduction, acceptance of what? And that's why we believe we need to show what are SICAM solutions. And that's what we have done in several projects, because seeing, we believe, is believing. In 2021, in Fabulous Project, we organized a demonstration of a shuttle circulating partially in mixed traffic between a train station and the automotive campus. It has not been easy to organize. We had to reconsider the initial route. We had to make strong, or I would say, at our level, it was significant infrastructural adjustments. And the demo happened during the COVID crisis. So due to social distancing rules, you remember these ones, we could not bring on board the number of users we wanted. So, but we drew very positive lessons from this pilot. Notably, we learned a lot on legal procedure, and we also, there was an in-depth focus on the interactions between these automated vehicles and the other users, and notably the cyclists, which in the Netherlands is quite important. In 2022, we organized another kind of pilot on a private ground within the Living Lab project. So the main objective of this project was to test the condition to switch from a shuttle with an onboard operator, safety operator, to remote operators who would be able to monitor fleet of automated vehicles. So we collected a lot of data related to the workload of teleoperators, and maybe for those who were in the previous session in the B room, you see that it is a topic that is currently quite high. And it showed that in the project, it showed that remote driving or remote operating was an exhausting activity, actually. We also, with the current technology, we also collected interesting feedbacks from the passenger experience, and notably from people with disabilities. And maybe it is not very obvious on this picture, but the people that you can see in this vehicle are the king and the queen of the Netherlands, so we were quite honored to have them on board. No. Yes. So from 2023 until now, we have been a partner in Move to SICAM project, which was mentioned also. In this project, we organized a series of workshops with citizens and stakeholders in order to better understand their needs, expectations, but also fears about SICAM. So we paid attention to the recruitments of the citizens we had, because we did not want, maybe it's pejorative, but we did not want the usual suspects of consultation to participate in that. So we really wanted to make sure that some groups, like people living in less dense areas of our territory, or people with disabilities, were well represented in the workshops we organized. And we really made sure also that there were some balance on gender and also on age. We partially succeeded. With them, we co-created some use cases. Together, we retained 5 use cases, which would be the most adapted, according to them, to Helmond. We have been surprised that to see that a majority of people mentioned they would need efficient shared SICAM solutions. And for each of the use case, both organizations and citizens considered what could be the potential impacts on environment, economy, equity, safety, mobility, network efficiency, land use, and else. I will not develop a lot of this, because you have here a stand, a Move to SICAM stand, where you can have a look on what we did. Sorry, forgot something. And within Move to SICAM, we continued to let our citizens experience SICAM. So first, virtually, 40 citizens could first experience a short ride in virtual reality. They could choose to use an automated bus, an automated car, or a combination of both, like something in order to compare. And they're circulated in various environments, I mean, from the city center to an industrial area. They were also able to circulate in the night. there were also various situations like people that were a little bit drunk that went into the bus, for example, or traveling alone in the bus. This was the kind of situations we had. And the reactions were monitored thanks to an EEG device, recording the activity of the brain. Then they could also see and test for real 3 types of vehicles: an automated shuttle, an automated 30-passenger bus, and a delivery robot. So these experiences were followed by in-depth questionnaire and debriefs. And one of the conclusions was that for many participants, there was a positive evolution in their intention to use AVs between the before situation and the after situation. And of course, you can see more results. We have more than 400 pages deliverable, if it interests you, that is available. Helmond has developed also a roadmap for the deployment of automated vehicle. We have the ambition to improve the last mile transport, and the decision makers adopted this roadmap consisting in a gradual approach for the deployment of an automated transport service. First, we want to deploy, and this is from this year, we want to deploy a SICAM service in an industrial area. We choose this area because it is a quite easy ODD. I will detail a little bit in my next slide, but not too long. A second phase will be to deploy a SICAM service in a more complex ODD between a train station and one of the economic hotspots. And I mentioned that Mr. Mayor mentioned this. It could also be a service that could be provided in this city. Then the third phase would be to implement a high frequent automated public transport in the very city center in mixed traffic. What I want to stress is we really want to go gradually and finish one phase before entering the other phase. So we have initiated the first phase of the roadmap, the implementation of an automated public transport service in the industrial area called BZOB. It's located, maybe you can see, on the southeast of the city of Helmond, so quite on the outskirts of our city. We organized a tender to procure the service, and a 8-passenger automated shuttle has been selected. It was important for us that the vehicle we retain was based on an homologated vehicle, an electric Renault Master, and the manufacturer really installed its own software and hardware. And we have associated the authority that is delivering the vehicle, RDW, in the discussions we had with the provider of the vehicle before signing the contract, to be sure that they were also able to meet the requirements. But this is long to get in the Netherlands the authorization to operate. We are still, I mean, the manufacturer is still in the process of obtaining this authorization, and we hope we will be able to have this year from late summer, I would say, an operation with a safety operator on board. Then next year, if all requirements are met, we really intend to have an operation without an operator on board. So this is my last slide, and I hope that this presentation showed that in Helmond, we see SICAM services as a real opportunity, not just for innovation, but for solving practical mobility challenges for our citizens. Automated shared public transport services can help reduce private car use, address the bus driver shortage, we spoke a lot about that, boost also our economy, I think it's important for Helmond, and improve road safety. But success is far from depending only on technology. It also depends on people. And Marian mentioned that it was we need to articulate the real needs to emergent technology, and that it is quite challenging. And I believe that it is why social sciences are really essential. We need to understand the user perceptions. I insist on perceptions, because perceptions, according to me, are as important or even more important than real or concrete figures. And identify the needs of diverse groups, co-create solutions with our citizens to ensure acceptance and inclusivity. There are still barriers to overcome. I mean, the regulations is still evolving. We need to find the right business model, and probably new business models will emerge. And we know we need to avoid the risk that AVs will benefit only for a few, which is not so simple. Huh? We must tackle really these challenges carefully. And importantly, we believe that AVs are part of the solution, but they are not the whole solution. They must not undermine walking and cycling. We strongly also insist on that. And they need to fit into a broader mobility strategy, and I would say a broader city strategy as a whole. We can only move forward through strong cooperation. We cannot do things only by our own, only by the will of the city. It's important, the will of the city is essential, but it's not, we need to work with industry, startups, researchers, and the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mathieu. So now it's almost your turn. Questions, comments, objections, other perspectives from the audience. Hold it for a second. There one question, even just one? Okay. That's basically all already tired. Or was it's that comprehensive that there weren't any open questions anymore? So ask your question, and after that I give Hanne the floor for a certain wrap-up.
Okay, thanks a lot. This was very insightful. My name is Ingrid Skogsmo. I work with VTI, the Swedish National Road and Transport Research Institute. I'm also leader of CCAM Cluster 6, Societal Aspects and People Needs. So obviously this is super important and very interesting to hear your views. I was wondering many things, but one of the things, of all those expectations that are mentioned for what CCAM can bring, and all the plans you have, and when you speak about the role of automation, how automated do the vehicles need to be to support your expectations or to help fulfilling them? Are we speaking about that this a leap will be taken once we have level 4 with remote, or can we go on with level 4 and a safety driver for a long time? Or I'm just curious, when we say CCAM, what exactly is it that is being waited for?
Interesting question. I would say we can ask everyone on the panel what's his or her individual perspective on that, and I hope they might be different. Mathieu, could you get me the mic back?
Thanks a lot, Ingrid, for your question. I think it's a real question. I think it's really important that you mentioned that, because in reality, what small and medium-sized city means is transport options. So we take advantage of CCAM, we believe, to have transport option. We really believe that there is no level 4, level 5 use cases. Use cases are if we do not solve the financial equation. It's important to have the level 4 or level 5 to have a financial, to have a service that is financially viable, I would say. It's really important. Otherwise, we do not think in that. But in terms of, I believe that also CCAM can bring a lot for the city in terms of safety and so on. But it is true that what people in small and medium-sized cities are looking for before having CCAM services, they are looking for services and solutions to go from one point to another. That's really true.
Yeah, difficult to not repeat. I think the question is tricky because it has a lot to do with what are the services supposed to, what kind of role is it supposed to fulfill? And that's the main question, really. And of course, then the economic perspective is important, and a lot of the calculations that you see today has to do with the fact that it needs to take away the driver for it to be viable, economically viable. So I think, yeah, that's my short answer.
And have a seat. Have a seat at the bar, please.
It's the same. We have to look for finance, and we have to look for the lack of bus drivers. So it has to be the way to level 5. We don't, as said, one supervisor for 3 buses. That's what's make the whole public transport affordable in hopefully 5 years.
Okay, thank you. And also, have a seat over there, Laura.
I mean, everything has been said now. I mean, I subscribe to economic. I do think that there are, you know, we talked about different benefits, that there might be some gains here without getting to level 5, but there is also some risk. We talk a lot about the transition period, what it will mean when we have like a mixed traffic of automated and non-automated. So perhaps before things like really you gain everything, we will have a period that we might even see like a bigger increase, like on, or a different type, looking at road safety, different type of accidents caused by this transition and this mix that we still don't know so much about when we have like a fully road with non-automated cars, automated buses, delivery robots, and whatnot. I think that there's still a lot that we don't know, but to fully get the benefits, it's what they mentioned. We hear it all the time. The economic is the main incentive for the public transport use case, which is the one that is prioritized by most of our members.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Satisfied with the answer?
Yes, I am, and I think I was expecting to hear something along these lines, because I think in some cases a lot can be achieved by actually having human-driven vehicles instead of large buses, for example. You get a better business case to drive to communities. So, but yeah, thank you.
Thanks. More questions, comments, objections, other perspectives over there.
I mean, just for the clarity, we are talking about different things here, level 3, 4, and 5. And I think right now there is no level 5 in the discussion, because level 5 means anywhere, anytime, without the driver. So what we are talking about in public transport is level 4. That means there is a person supervising the vehicles. So just to be clear that we talk about the same thing.
Yeah, that was a comment. I give Hanne the floor for like 2 minutes and leave you some time to think about additional questions. You can, oh, you want to use that mic?
Use this mic?
Okay,
Yeah.
whatever you want.
Okay. So I've been listening in to the discussions and the panelists, and I thought I would try to sum it up from a social science perspective, because I think it's interesting both during the introduction today and also during the panel today that the discussion seems to converge. It seems like we have been working together in a project or something, but we haven't. So it seems like the discussion is converging and that we agree on the needs of the cities, what we want to achieve. And I also think that there has been significant advancements during the last few years within social science and humanities aspects within the CCAM domain. And it's also gaining more attention through the societal readiness pilots and so on, which I think is great. But my question after thinking about this is that if we all agree on this, that this is a good idea, then why don't we just do that in the projects every time? Why do we need to have pilots to do that? Can't we just do it? To spend more time early in the projects and through the projects to integrate social science throughout the entire project phase. So that we are more in line with the user needs. We know what the user needs are from the beginning, and we are able to align the stakeholders to a much larger extent than if we don't do this participatory-based approach. So I think that my reflection is that wouldn't it be in the interest of everyone to actually have this participatory approach within the projects? Because this would ultimately ensure that we have a better CCAM, both products and services. And these methods that we're talking about, using workshops and co-creation, participatory-based methods, they are also under development. It's not a static approach. It's something that's also evolving and which needs time to mature, just in the same way that the technology needs time to evolve. Also, the other parts within this large ecosystem, which the technology is going to be a part of. The ecosystem also needs time to evolve, as well as the social science perspectives and methods. And these haven't been equally emphasized so far. So I think that we are all standing on the shoulders of giants, on previous projects, on previous technologies, inventions, and so on. And we need to evolve together, as we have talked so much about today. But actually using the social science methods to our benefit, I think that would be a huge added value to the community.
Thanks, Anna. Additional questions from the audience. That's your opportunity now. There was somebody in the very back. I'll take this one. Yeah, gentleman behind you. Yep.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thanks to the speakers for the great presentations and good stories. What was running through my mind is that I hear two things. I hear about automation of drivers, and I hear about complex ODDs in the end. But this morning we were talking about a revolution or a transition. So maybe we shouldn't always think about the existing system to work on. I mean, right now we have a driver, and if the driver is automated, well, that may be not the case, but new services that could be developed in these vehicles or around these vehicles. And complex ODDs, well, maybe if we come from a policy point of view to designated roads that are only designated to automated vehicles, then we don't have to interact everywhere, and that most of the streets in the cities could be for active modalities. That's a whole new system, but that's in the end what we're talking about, not tomorrow, not next year, but in 30, 40 years, as we plan now on infrastructure, we may. So it's more maybe, more or less a statement maybe, but...
a comment rather than a question. Thank you. Now you're getting awake, I guess.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm a researcher in sustainable mobility and urban planning, Politecnico di Milano. You have brilliantly shown how are the benefits that this technology can have on public transport, but we also know that this technology is not only to be applied in public transport, also for private vehicles. And my question to you is regarding policy, not for applying the connected and automated technology to public transport, but on the competence that we may have from the private vehicles. My point is, if this technology is also being applied and extended to all the private vehicles that would be around, is there a possibility that in these cases of small and medium cities, the public transport would be applied enough? So I would like to hear from you if you have any idea on how could be disincentivizing the use of connected and automated vehicles for private vehicles to achieve better public transport in those cases. Thank you.
Who wants to answer? Who wants to start? Difficult question, I guess.
Well, I'm a dreamer, and I think we have to have goals. This was a discussion in the morning. And if we don't think that we can reach in 5 or 10 years small or medium-sized buses which drive on our streets all 10 minutes and collect the people which wanted to be collected, that would be wrong. So we have to dream this, and I think that's a way. But to reach this, I have to say again, we have to leave the tower of scientific discussions. We need industrial politics. We need manufacturers to build these buses and to earn the technical know-how from the high-level drivers. It's a Maserati over there. I saw it's a Mercedes, BMW. They have the technique, and we, for public transport, don't have it. So I think if we succeed to get the technical progress from the great manufacturers, then that's a way to get enough buses for a really comfortable public transport in large cities and then small cities.
Your question is really interesting, but I think that we need to consider that one automated car occupies the same space as one regular or conventional car. So there will be also congestions of automated car if we just if there are no public transportation, or if there are no, I would say, shared transportation modes. So I agree with you that we need to incentivize all this so that shared modes, or it might be also shared use of automated cars, why not? But I think what we should avoid is really the private use of car as much as we can. Of course, for some functionalities, for some specific, there will always be a need for a car. We don't want to avoid car in every use, especially in SMC, but we want to reduce its predominant role in the city.
We have another question over here.
Hi. My name is Pia Blessing. I'm from a startup called Dromos, and tomorrow morning I will actually be a participant in a session also on public transport, and specifically my part is going to be talking about a business case. So I do find it very, very interesting that you all said it must be level 5 in order to make it economically. And I also want to come back to your question, because when we have calculated many business cases in Germany, in UK, in the US, and I just want to give one, heads up, because it is not only about the driver that's missing that makes a business case attractive. I mean, most of the problems in public transport also come from missing utilization. We have been looking at bus lines where in the end per year there is about 1,000 travelers. That means 3 travelers per day. That is nothing, and it does not matter if this vehicle is driven autonomously or by a driver. It can never be economically feasible. So what I want to come back to, I also think what you just said, if we have to manage 2 things. We have to manage technology on the one hand, but we do have to manage utilization. And I mean, it's always a bad word to say, but sort of force more people into public transit, because if we do not take the whole package all around, our traffic system as we have it and live it right now in our cities, we will never be able to fill public transport and make it a more profitable system.
That again was a statement, another question?
Sort of a statement. So no, my question would be, are cities and our organizations and is science actually evaluating that enough?
Okay, thank you. Who wants to? Laura.
I mean, I agree 100%. That's also why one of the drivers that I put was making public transport more attractive, because it's on the one hand enabling the possibility of having more services because you need less drivers and you can operate under different conditions, but that alone is not it. We also need to make public transport more attractive, which we believe that it could be the case, that if you, like it's a bit of like if you make transport more available, more reliable, then that you will make, that you will increase the usage. Is it properly evaluated? I think that it's very hard, and that's also what we have been advocating, that we need to get a better understanding also with these large-scale deployments of how it affects at the system level. It's very hard to understand how much a vehicle is going to be used in a pilot that goes sometimes from weeks to a couple of months. So it's really hard also to evaluate it like this. But I agree with the sentiment. That's why also I think Mathieu mentioned it, that it's not only about the technology, that it comes with many other aspects that we need to take care, where the city plays a huge role in it. So it's not only about enabling a public transport that goes from A to B, but then we need to maybe nudge cars so they cannot do the same route in the city center with the low emission zones. This car cannot enter under these conditions or anything else. So it's always a combination of solutions. We are definitely not supporters of only technology.
I think you need time for behavior change. You cannot implement a measure and next month you observe a significant change. It's not that possible. So you need time, you need evolution, and that's why I think to have a gradual approach as we do possibly is the right solution, because you let the chance for a system, you let the chance for it to have a real evolution and to have a real impact on the citizens and on the city as a whole. We don't know actually what will be the full impacts. We are just guessing, but I think it's worth going in that path.
Yeah, if I can comment from the research perspective, I agree very much with both of you that it really has to be connected to shared mobility and to have the sustainability question up there all the time. And but I think in one way you have to take the gradual deployment and learn from the small steps. But when it comes to transport system planning and how we regard our transport system again, I think actually we need disruption and to think quite differently about how we plan our transport systems, and that really needs as much policy innovation as transport innovation. And it's a pity, I think, that there's not enough focus on that. Because these kind of public-private partnerships and the integration of these services into the city and the systems is not something that happens by itself. It has it's a lot of work that needs to be done, and measures that needs to be tested as well, and how to combine different policies, and how can you actually look at the mobility service from more perspective than transporting people from A to B, but what kind of, is it maybe it's a policy for including people more, or it's a health policy. It depends on how actually you are able to see transport and mobility as something that is right and service cutting across different policy domains. And to do that and to make that kind of innovation, it's quite hard.
Okay, I have one question over here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Wolfgang from Mubrich Consult. Public transport is organized quite differently across Europe. And in Germany, for example, we have regional transport associations, etc. So for a rural perspective or more peri-urban perspective, what would you think is a cost-effective and efficient organization? Who should be the player? That someone who does remote operations for several cities? So what do you have in mind for this?
Thank you. Who wants to answer this?
Okay. The smaller city. Well, I think the way Hamburg, city of Hamburg, is going is not so bad. They ordered 1,000 ID buses and try in real, not in a test setting, the acceptance and the technique. I think the way you have to order cars, you have to order the buses, and then you can try to realize, and then the other large cities will see it can work. And so I think that's the way we have to do it in Germany. The large cities, the large traffic connections have to do it.
Okay, I have one final question for you all before we kind of close the session, because we have to take care of the ribbon cutting ceremony, I guess. If you've all spoken quite a lot about politics and policy making and less about policy instruments. If you could wish for a single policy instrument that would enable somebody to deploy automated transportation services for public transport in small and medium communities much faster than now, what would that be like? And in whose hands should it be? Should it be at EU level, on city level, on state level, on member state level, wherever? What's your take on this? All of you, please.
That's an extremely hard question.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm asking.
I'm not sure what the policy instrument would be. Maybe I leave the others to, but I know the level. And the level, I think it should be local or regional. Mm-hmm. I think what we have learned at Polis from all of our members, coming to the comment that Wolfgang just made, Europe is organized very differently from country to country, specifically talking about mobility. And I mean, in that case, like the whole subsidiarity exists for a reason, because the local contexts are important. And the policy instrument that works in Germany, it might not work in Spain or in the Netherlands or Belgium. So I think that which one is the perfect, I don't know. I let the others do.
Yeah. Okay.
I talk on the level.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm working on the local level, and I think we need a strong EU, which gives the goal, and then a strong connection from Brussels to the local authorities. I think the connection is what we need. So it's the only way to reduce all the differences in all the countries, or in Germany with Bundesländer, etc., etc. So I think the connection of the EU to the local authorities, that's perhaps the key. I hope so.
Okay, thank you. Mathieu.
Yeah, I would say that all levels are important, but I would say that the impulse should be given really by the EU. It's really important that, that the EU give the impulse. Something we face in the Netherlands is really the difficulties, or I would say we have with the legal aspects, which are really demanding, I would say. And yes, as was mentioned by Laura, the situations are really vary from one state to another, and there is a need for harmonization. I've been involved in SICAM for nearly 20 years now. We have been picking up a common framework at European level for more than 15 years, but so far it's not coming. So I know that the states and the national authorities have to stay in that, but we need to harmonize a bit if we want to have something that are concretely on the streets at local or national level.
Okay, thanks. Marianne?
Yes, I think if I could have a dream and wish for a policy, it would be a policy that actually cuts across different sectors, that actually integrates providing mobility services with inclusion, and yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I was thinking in the same lines that for me, the most viable option would be to have a very inclusive, participatory approach where we basically would do the same as we would with the public. So have a very open and participatory-based process where everyone gets to participate with their views, because it's, yeah, as we have said here today, it's very different from the different cities' perspective, what will work in the local context. So we need to understand that in each individual context, but some things are likely to be the same. And maybe we need to know those things. What will be the same, what will be different in different locations.
Okay, with that, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining the session. Thank you very much for participating. And I guess the next event is the ribbon cutting ceremony at 6, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you for coming. Thank you for discussing, and looking forward to meeting you over the next day somewhere else.